Hey there, welcome to Curtis Stage Video Tutorials. This tutorial is getting started in Dreamweaver Creative Cloud Part 2. And in this tutorial, we're going to talk about what are the key parts every website needs, creating HTML structure on a basic level, what are tags, and what is CSS and how does it affect the HTML. Now we'll do a Part 3 that will be the CSS part of this. We're not going to include that in this tutorial, that would take too long. So let's get started. The very first thing we need to do is kind of talk about what every website kind of has. So if we look at this little kind of graphic here, most websites have these objects. So header, a navigation bar that would have links in it, content, maybe they have a sidebar and a footer. And this is a basic layout structure or a wireframe. No design is here. This is just kind of where you would put the design elements. So each one of these sections or boxes is where you'd put design. Now, this is what we're going to make today in Dreamweaver. We're going to make these sections, we're going to make these boxes. It's not going to look like this yet because this actually has some layout, a little bit of layout design to it, but we are going to make the structure here. So let's get started with that in Dreamweaver. Now you remember last tutorial, if you watched that part 1, we learned how to connect to the files panel and we learned how to save some files in there. So you can see that I have my files panel open with a couple files from last tutorial in it, and I'm not going to use those for right now, but I'm going to make a new file. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to click HTML Doctype, and it's an HTML5. I'm not going to click Bootstrap. That's a whole bunch of templates that are a little bit too complicated for a beginning user, and we're going to click Create. Once we do that, we have a blank white page. Now, if we're connected to our files panel like you learned how to do in part 1 of these tutorials, then it should be no problem saving this because you're connected to your folder. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and look at that, it's connected to my folder on my hard drive. So on my campus where I teach at Los Angeles Mission College, we have a shared network drive called Johnny the Geek, and then I have my folder, and then I have classwork, and you'll see there's my stuff. And I want to save that there. I want to title this, I'm going to say page 3 or page underscore 3 or page dash 3, either one of those things, but I do not want to have a page space 3, and I also do not want to have a capital P here. I'm going to keep everything lowercase. I'm going to keep this page underscore 3 so it matches my last one. I'm going to click Save. So there you go, and in my Files panel you'll see that there it is in my folder that I connected to. So Dreamweaver is talking to my hard drive or talking to our network drive here. So I'm going to close that up, and we have a blank page here, nothing going on. You can see that I have 3 possible ways to view in Dreamweaver. I've got Design View and Live View. So Live View would be more kind of what it would look like in a browser. Design View is not in a browser, but gives you kind of a what you see is what you get format. Split View is Code and Design View, and then Code View completely. And that's the one we're going to be on for right now, and we'll go back and forth and look at Design View, although we're not doing much design tonight. Okay, the things that every website has to have, it won't work as a website if it doesn't have these elements, and luckily Dreamweaver builds those for us so we can get started with something. So line 1 is our doc type. This basically just tells the browser that this is an HTML5 document, so the browser can then go, oh, those rules that apply to HTML5 will then also apply to this document, so it can read that document much easier if it knows what kind of doc type it is. Your web page will not work if it doesn't have that line 1 there. It will also not work if it doesn't have HTML tags. Here's the opening HTML tag. Here's the closing HTML tag. And everything else is nested inside those 2 HTML tags. Nesting is a big word that we're going to use in my tutorials in Dreamweaver. So we have these tags nested inside the HTML tags. You'll notice that the closing HTML tag has a slash. That's how we know that's the closing tag. And the opening tag up here does not have a slash in front. Then we have the head tags that we have the opening one here, then some stuff nested inside the head tags, and then the closing one. Now what are the head tags? This is elements that are not on our page in terms of design. They're behind the scenes stuff. so we don't see these show up on our page. Things like metadata, keywords, descriptions of your site, this title which shows up actually on the top of your Chrome browser. Those are the things that happen inside the head tag. Design stuff happens inside the body tag, and that's where we're going to put our structure that we're going to make today. So I'm going to put my cursor right after that opening body tag and give myself some space here. Just hit return a few times so I've got some space. And we're going to do this with lots of space in between things so we can really see how this works. Normally you don't code the way we're going to code right now. If you code for a long time, you kind of run everything together. But we're going to keep some spaces, and I suggest you do that too if you're new to Dreamweaver and coding in HTML. It just makes it a lot easier. So if we look back at my little graphic that I have here, we've got a bunch of elements. I'm going to start with the header, then the navigation, then content, sidebar, footer. I'm going to go in that order. It's important that you go in the right order in HTML. The order matters here. So the very first thing I'll do is I'll make a header. Now, the word header is a word that every web browser will know what that is. That means it's an agreed upon syntax. Every browser in the world knows what a header is, so we don't have to do anything but put the word header in there, and that will make more sense to you in a second when we do something that is not agreed upon. So there's the opening header tag. I'm going to hit return a few times, and I'm going to put a bracket and a slash, and notice Dreamweaver will close that header tag for me. I'm going to put some design content. When I say design, I'm just saying some text. I'm going to put some text in here just so we can kind of see some things in our design view. This is where some header info will go. Info will go, or a logo, right? This is maybe what you'd put inside the header. If I go to design view, I will see that show up on my page, right? That's inside my tags, and this is going to show up on my page. Now I'm going to hit return a couple times, give myself some space. I'm going to do that nav. Nav, the word nav is short for navigation, and that is also an agreed upon syntax or word that every browser knows that that's an HTML word, knows what to do with that. So we're going to just put the word nav there. It's all lowercase. There's my opening tag, and hit return a couple times. And I'm going to close this nav, and I'll type some stuff in here. I'm just going to copy this to make things quicker. Command C, Command V, and I'll just change this so it says nav there. And now I'm going to put my cursor after the closing tag of nav, hit return a couple times, give myself some space, and this is where I'll want to put content. Now, content is syntax that a browser doesn't know what it is. I might as well be saying unicorn or rainbow or the LA Dodgers here. This is not a word that is an agreed upon syntax in HTML, so a browser doesn't technically know what content is, the word content. So I can't just write content here, unfortunately. Now, maybe in the next year or two, this will be an approved word as part of HTML, but in 25 years it hasn't been, so we'll see. So I can't just do this like we did above. I have to do this a little bit a different way. It still will be the same object as the previous two. It'll still be work exactly the same way as the header and the nav. It'll still be a box, but I have to do it just a little bit differently. So I have to put the word div in there, which is short for division, which basically think of a div as a section or a box on our website. And that's essentially what these are too. They're divs as well, but they're just agreed upon div names. So now I'm going to define this div. So div space class, and I'll talk about what a class is in part 3 of this tutorial when we talk more about CSS. And then I'm going to say equals, and then I'm going to do a quotation mark and put the name of whatever I want to call this box. I'm going to call it content, but again, I can call this whatever I want. It could be called unicorn, and as long as I know what unicorn is, totally fine. This is my opening tag, so this right here is the equivalent of the nav right there, or the equivalent of the header right there. Now let's put our cursor right at the end of this, hit return a couple times, and close that. Notice it doesn't do what the nav did and what the header did. it closes it with the word div right here. It doesn't close it with the word content because that's the name I made up. So it knows it's a div box. I'm going to put this, I'm going to put just some it's text right here in there, so just save us some time. And I'll just change this to the word content. And let's make another one. Let's make a sidebar. Now, sidebar is another word that is not proper syntax for HTML. So we have to do the same thing I just did above. Div space class equals quotation mark. I could say side if I want here, but I'm going to say sidebar. And then that's my opening tag. I'm going to hit return a couple times. And I'm going to close this. And that's a closing. And then I'm going to put my text in here and call this a sidebar. Now recently HTML5 came up with another object that's similar to a sidebar called an article, and that is approved syntax like nav and header. And I could do something like this. I could just do article here, and notice how Dreamweaver, you can see it right there popping up. That is an approved term, so I could use article, and it's similar to a sidebar. And I could have information in there and do this and just change this text to say article. Okay, and then let me do one more. Let's do a footer. Footer is another approved syntax. It's not a name I made up. This is a name that all browsers agree and all HTML agrees is a proper term, proper syntax. So I'm going to just put the word footer. I don't have to put div space class equals. I got to spell that right though. Div space class equals. I don't have to do that here. And I'm going to hit return a couple times, put the closing of the footer, and paste in my text. Change this just so I know what's what. And there I go. Now if I go to design view, I have a bunch of boxes. Look at, they're all stacked up on top of each other, starting on the top and going down on the left-hand side. And they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're basically the structure. There's no design layout whatsoever. We're going to do that in the next tutorial that will involve CSS or cascading style sheets. We'll get to that then. But let's do one more thing in this just to kind of finalize this. Most websites don't just have a bunch of divs, and these are all divs, by the way. I know this is the one that says div, and this is the one that says div right here, div class equals. Those are the two that I made up. But all of these actually are div boxes. They are things that we can put stuff into. So they're all div boxes, just the big differences is these are agreed upon names, agreed upon name, agreed upon name, agreed upon name, right? Does that make sense? These are not agreed upon names, okay? Now, normally they don't just free float on a website. Normally you have all of these boxes sitting inside a box that you can control and maybe center and be able to see kind of a background behind it, which would be the body of your website. So this body here, top and bottom, is really kind of the background of the browser. So that's the opening of the body and the closing of the body. Think of the body as if you saw like a background pattern on a website or a gradient or a color, even a solid color, that's usually the body background color. And so that's your kind of real estate of your website, and everything else is kind of your property, your rooms, and your on your property. Let's build the foundation for all these rooms, and I like to call that container, not agreed upon name. Some people say the word wrapper, W-R-A-P-P-E-R, but I use container. And Dreamweaver actually used the word container as well when they used to make these templates. So let's do that one. So div space class, and again you're probably wondering, why am I using this word class? Don't worry, we're going to find out what the word class means in part 3 of this tutorial. Equals, and then I'm going to write in the word container and quotation mark and close that. Now I can't close container right here, right? I can't do what we've been doing on the other boxes here. I can't close it right there because it won't hold all the rest of these items here. I want this container to hold all those items. So actually I want it to go all the way down below the footer and above the body tag. So I'm going to cut this, Command X. I'm going to put the container down here somewhere and paste that. And I'm going to even give myself a note telling me that that is the container. So this is the close of container. Now that's pretty wordy there, right? I wouldn't normally do that. I would just probably say close of container, or close container would be even better, something like that. I'm going to highlight this. I can't just leave this here, otherwise that will show up on my site. I don't want that to show up here. Look at that in design view. So I'm going to highlight this, and if you look over here on the side of your Dreamweaver, this little options bar over here, you're going to see this little symbol right here. You're going to see that right there. Click it and apply HTML comment. And now that won't show up on my design view. See that? Now it's not there anymore. I'm going to go to code view. So that closes my container. So here's my opening of my container, and here's my closing of my container. And now all of these other objects, these div boxes, these sections, are all nested inside the container, and that will give us a lot more flexibility when we go to part 3. It doesn't look like I have anything. It doesn't look like there's a container here at all. I don't see the word container anywhere here because I didn't give any content to it, right? I didn't type anything like I typed with these guys. So I didn't put anything there, so we don't see anything in the word. But believe me, it's there. It's surrounding all these. And we're going to find out more about that in part 3. We'll really see that come into play. So that's been another Curtis Stage video tutorial, and we will see you in part 3, which will talk about CSS and what that does. It controls the style and the layout of our page. So we're going to really talk about that in part 3 and make this kind of all come together. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.